was the summer of 1986. The Iowa State Fair was in full swing. Bright lights lit up the fairgrounds. Children laughed as they raced from ride to ride, and the smell of funnel cakes and popcorn drifted through the warm August air. Among the thousands of visitors that day was the Harper family, Dan, Linda, and their 12-year-old daughter Emily. They weren't locals, just passing through on their way to visit relatives in Minnesota. It was meant to be a day of simple pleasures. Emily had begged to go. She'd circled the date on the calendar weeks in advance. Dan bought her a blue ribbon candy apple, and Linda snapped a picture of her standing near the entrance of the funhouse, smiling wide. Emily loved puzzles, riddles, and anything with a touch of mystery. So when she saw the sign for the House of Mirrors, she lit up with excitement. What none of them knew then was that this would be the last photograph ever taken of Emily Harper. That moment, so innocent and joyful, would become part of a mystery that has haunted the Iowa State Fairgrounds for nearly 4 decades. Every year since, someone leaves flowers by the entrance to that same funhouse. No name, no note, just white lilies, laid gently by the gate, and some say that on certain nights, if the wind is just right, you can hear a child crying from deep inside the maze. It started like any normal fair visit. Emily asked to go into the mirror maze alone. It wasn't uncommon. Kids went in and out by themselves all day. Dan and Linda sat nearby on a bench, sipping lemonades and watching the crowd. 15 minutes passed, then 30. They began to worry. They stood by the exit, expecting her to come out laughing. But she didn't. A staff member went in to check. No Emily. At first it seemed like maybe she'd just gotten turned around and exited elsewhere. But a thorough sweep revealed nothing. Panic began to rise. The police were called. Search dogs, helicopters, volunteers, all combed through the fairgrounds. But there was no sign of her. No screams, no struggle. Just gone. Then came the odd sightings. A retired security guard recalled seeing a strange man, tall, wearing a faded green cap, guiding a crying girl toward the employee-only entrance behind the funhouse. He thought she was lost, and the man was helping her. But the cameras in that area? Wiped. The tapes for that day were mysteriously blank. One booth vendor later said he saw a child's reflection in the mirror maze, long after it had been closed for the night. But when he went to investigate, it was empty. Just his own reflection staring back at him. Every lead went cold, and the Harper family, broken, eventually returned home, without answers, without closure. In the years that followed, the story of Emily Harper became a whispered legend. Some dismissed it as an urban myth. Others, especially longtime Des Moines locals, knew better. One of those locals was Claire Jensen, a young journalist for a regional magazine. She stumbled upon the case while doing a retrospective on missing persons in Iowa. The deeper she dug, the stranger it got. The fair's official records were vague, almost too vague. Several employees who had worked the funhouse that year had since disappeared or refused to talk. And the structure itself? It had been renovated multiple times, but older blueprints hinted at a sealed-off section behind the mirror maze. Claire interviewed Linda Harper, who shared a chilling detail. Weeks after the fair, she received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid photo. It was blurry, but Linda swore it was Emily, standing in a hallway of mirrors, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. That photo was never made public. Claire became obsessed. She visited the fairgrounds during off-seasons, breaking into the funhouse one night with a friend. They explored every corner, but behind one mirror, they found a wall with faint scratches, like fingernail marks. They heard something too, a soft whisper, "Help me." But when they spun around, there was no one there. Claire's friend refused to return after that night. Determined to get answers, Claire returned alone. She brought a flashlight, an old recorder, and a copy of the funhouse's earliest floor plan. Around 2 a.m., she entered the maze. The mirrors warped her reflection into monstrous shapes. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the squeak of her sneakers and her own breathing. Then she saw it, a mirror that didn't reflect her. Instead, it showed a girl, standing still, her face blank. Emily. Claire reached out. The mirror was cold. The air shifted, heavy. The lights flickered. From behind her came the sound of footsteps, slow, measured. She spun around. Nothing. Then a whisper again. "Help me." She backed away, her recorder crackling with static. A cold wind rushed through the corridor. Every mirror began to fog over. The whispers grew louder, voices overlapping, pleading. She ran, navigating through endless reflections, until finally bursting out into the open night, gasping for air. The next day, she listened to the recording. The static was there, but buried beneath it, a child's voice. "Mommy!" Claire dug deeper. She discovered that the funhouse had been owned in 1986 by a man named Vincent Croft, a former magician with a history of mental illness and suspected involvement in cult activities. He disappeared a year after Emily vanished. Local archives mentioned an incident from 1954. Another girl went missing at the fair, also last seen near the mirror maze. Her name, Emma Cartwright, a distant relative of Linda Harper. The pattern was unsettling. Every 32 years, a girl disappeared. Emily in 1986, Emma in 1954, both linked by bloodline and by mirrors. Claire confronted Linda with this discovery. Linda, pale and shaking, confessed something she never told police. Emily had been having nightmares weeks before the trip. Dreams about being pulled into a mirror, of someone whispering her name. The fair officials quietly dismantled the original funhouse in 2022, citing structural decay. But during demolition, workers found something. A sealed room, no door, just mirrors on all sides. And in the center, an old blue ribbon candy apple, perfectly preserved, along with a faded photo. Emily standing by the funhouse, eyes hollow, like she was staring at something, or someone, behind the camera. Today, the spot where the maze once stood is fenced off. But every year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, someone still leaves white lilies there. Some say it's Linda. Others say she died years ago. And if you ever visit the fairgrounds late at night, some claim they still hear a girl crying. Trapped in a reflection, waiting to come home. In the quiet town of Wayridge, Texas, nestled between dry stretches of farmland and dust-covered roads, there was once a small traveling carnival that made its rounds every summer. It wasn't flashy or renowned, just a modest affair with cotton candy stands, rickety rides, and the ever-present scent of fried dough lingering in the air. To the people of Wayridge, it was more than just an event. It was a tradition, a seasonal ritual that brought warmth and nostalgia. The summer of 1999 was no different. Families flocked to the carnival grounds, laughter echoing beneath a blazing orange sunset. That evening, the Harmon family joined the celebration. Jake Harmon, a 17-year-old high school senior, brought his 8-year-old sister Emily to enjoy the festivities. Jake was known in town as dependable and kind-hearted, the sort of brother who would skip out on teenage parties just to spend time with his little sister. They devoured candy apples and cotton candy, tried their hands at winning oversized stuffed animals, and squealed with delight on spinning teacups. As the evening wound down, Emily pleaded for one last ride before heading home, the towering Ferris wheel at the edge of the carnival. Jake relented with a smile, buying 2 tickets and holding her hand as they approached. The Ferris wheel turned slowly, its metal arms gleaming under the carnival lights. The ride, it seemed, would mark the perfect end to a perfect night. What the Harmon family didn't realize was that this final ride would mark the beginning of a mystery that would haunt Wayridge for generations. Everything about the ride seemed normal at first. The Ferris wheel creaked and groaned, slowly lifting the pair into the twilight sky. From their seat, Emily looked out over the glowing carnival lights and the silhouettes of laughing crowds below. Jake leaned back, enjoying her excitement. Halfway through the ride, something strange happened. The wheel came to a sudden halt with a metallic clunk. The lights around them flickered twice and dimmed, leaving the ride bathed in an eerie, dull glow. A hush fell over the carnival as if time itself had paused. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jake instinctively pulled Emily close. She asked him what was wrong, but he didn't know. No announcements came. No workers shouted explanations. The ride simply sat frozen, high in the air. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then, without warning, the wheel jolted back to life. Slowly, it resumed its rotation, bringing the cars back to the ground. Emily stepped off the ride and turned to speak to her brother, but Jake wasn't behind her. His seat was empty. Panic erupted. The ride operator swore Jake had gotten on. The other passengers remembered seeing him. But there he wasn't. Police were called. Carnival staff searched high and low. Announcements blared over loudspeakers. But Jake had disappeared. Theories abounded. Some said he fell. But no thud was heard. No body was found. Others whispered about darker things. Unseen forces or the ride itself somehow taking him. Within a week, the Ferris wheel was dismantled. Officials cited a mechanical malfunction, but many felt the truth was being hidden. And then the stories began. Accounts from other towns, old clippings, strange patterns linked to the same carnival in different places. Time passed. Emily grew up with the ache of unanswered questions. Jake's disappearance became part of the town's lore. Some dismissed it as a tragic accident. Others avoided the subject entirely. But Emily couldn't forget. As she grew older, she felt an unrelenting need to uncover the truth. She began visiting libraries, diving into microfilm archives, tracing the history of the traveling carnival. What she discovered disturbed her deeply. Towns where the carnival appeared often had missing persons reports during or shortly after its visit. Returning to Wayridge, Emily began interviewing people who had been there that night, her childhood friends, old ride operators. She met resistance at every turn. Some refused to speak. Others gave cryptic responses. A few recalled seeing strange shadows on the Ferris wheel. One elderly woman claimed she'd seen Jake's reflection in a mirror days after the carnival left. Desperate for answers, Emily returned to the old carnival site. Overgrown with weeds, the lot seemed forgotten by time. Yet, as she walked, a cold breeze swept through the grass. Her foot struck something hard. She bent down and unearthed a rusted carnival ride token, one bearing the year 1999. That night, she dreamt of the Ferris wheel. In her dream, Jake sat in a gondola, unmoving. His lips moved, but no sound emerged. The air was thick, buzzing with energy. Emily awoke with the image burned into her mind, and a ringing in her ears like the whine of steel cables under tension. On the 20th anniversary of Jake's disappearance, Emily decided to confront whatever truth lay hidden in that field. The sky was ominous, a swirling mix of ash-gray clouds. The air was too still, too quiet. As she walked the overgrown lot, she spotted something bizarre, the faint circular imprint of the Ferris wheel in the grass. It hadn't been mowed or trimmed, but the mark was clear, like a memory scorched into the earth. Then came the sound, the unmistakable creak of a turning wheel. Her breath caught in her throat. There was no Ferris wheel, but the sound was undeniable. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. Emily's breath fogged. Then, before her eyes, the Ferris wheel appeared, not fully, but as a flickering outline, a phantom. In one of the top gondolas sat Jake. His face was pale, his eyes locked onto hers. Emily cried out and ran forward, but the image vanished. Disoriented, she stumbled into a small clearing and found something even stranger: an abandoned trailer, its walls covered in carvings and pinned notes. It had once belonged to the Ferris wheel operator. Inside, she found a journal. It contained ramblings about voices in the night, rides moving without power, and children reporting dreams of a man on the wheel. The final entry chilled her to the bone. It took the boy. It always takes someone. The wheel wants what it's owed. Emily pored over the journal, disturbed by its contents. But one photograph stood out, a picture of the Carnival staff taken before the 1999 event. To her shock, Jake was in it, standing alongside the ride operators, grinning. She couldn't understand. Jake had never worked for the Carnival. He never mentioned anything about it. But when she dug deeper, she found a folder buried in his old belongings: notes, maps, printouts. Jake had been researching the Carnival's dark history before it ever came to Weyridge. In his notes, Jake wrote about disappearances following the Carnival's path. His last entry was ominous. "If it's real, someone has to stop it. If I disappear, don't let them erase me." The realization hit Emily like a freight train. Jake hadn't simply vanished. He had sacrificed himself. He went on the Ferris wheel knowing something might happen. Maybe he thought he could break the cycle. Or maybe he was chosen. Armed with the journal and Jake's notes, Emily visited a regional folklorist who specialized in urban legends. He had heard whispers of the turning circle, a cursed ride said to claim one soul each time it spins in a new town. Emily decided to return one final time. She waited until twilight and stood at the same spot where the phantom Ferris wheel had appeared. Holding the rusted token, she shouted her brother's name and offered the coin into the wind. A sudden gust lifted the token from her hand. It hovered briefly, then disappeared. The wind ceased. Silence fell. Emily thought nothing had happened, but when she reviewed the video recording on her phone, her blood ran cold. In the final seconds, just as she turned to leave, the camera captured a faint figure stepping off an invisible ride. Tall, familiar. The video went viral. Paranormal communities dissected it frame by frame. But Emily never returned to the field. Some say she vanished shortly afterward. Others claim she took a new identity and lives in isolation. Each year, on the night of Jake's disappearance, Weyridge residents report hearing a strange creaking sound near the empty lot. A few brave souls say they've heard whispers riding the wind, gentle, beckoning. "Take my hand.